I'm really excited to have this special Sick Career podcast with my special guest, Dr. Elena Schlachter. I met Elena, how I meet everybody nowadays on the internet. I found her through LinkedIn, and she actually drew me in from some of her great content and surveys of how she focuses so much on learning and development and creating courses that not only are packaged well, but also more importantly, deliver the results that they're intended to achieve. And she's someone that really cares not just about selling stuff, but about creating courses and curriculums that deliver results. So I reached out to Elena. We started a conversation, and now we are talking. She is across the border now, down in Mexico. I'm calling from Brooklyn, but I will hand it off to Elena to she's going to be leading this episode as a special guest host of the Sick Career podcast.
Thank you, Alan. What a pleasure to be hosting you on your podcast. I mean, what a great way to start off the new year. I love it. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be a part of your team. And as you mentioned, getting great results is something that I'm really passionate about. A lot of times, learning is something that doesn't produce results. And you're all about coaching and courses and consulting that really helps people in their careers. And we want to talk about that today. So before we dive into what you offer and some of the new things that we're doing in the new year, tell us about what's happening in the world of work. We've seen layoffs by Amazon recently, 18,000 people. We've seen layoffs by Salesforce, 8,000 people, and there are many, many more. So some turbulence is happening in the new year. Tell us what's going on in the market. What do you see? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but just yesterday, Coinbase cut another 20% of their staff, 950 people. Goldman Sachs cut 3,200 people. And this is on the coattails of Facebook or Meta cutting 11,000 people, and Twitter and Elon Musk doing whatever craziness he does over there, cutting more than half of the staff there. So what we're seeing here is during the pandemic, everybody was stuck at home. Everybody was consuming a ridiculous amount of digital content. So all of these digital players were staffing up, and they were hiring in unprecedented ways. Typically, these companies would hire contractors or outsource personnel, but they were hiring FTEs, full-time employees on W-2. And they were hiring like at ridiculous levels, like it was going out of style. So they over hired in 2021, early 2022. And now they're realizing that people are going back out and they're now watching 18 hours a day of YouTube and Netflix and all those things. And the economy is going back to a little bit how it was before. So now they are taking a buzzsaw rather than a surgical scalpel knife, and they're just axing people left and right. And once Meta ripped off the Band-Aid and once Elon ripped off the Band-Aid, now it's so much simpler for all these companies to follow along like lemmings.
Well, I don't know about you, Alan, but that sounds terrifying. I wouldn't want to be somebody who is in the tech sector, or really, I mean, you mentioned Goldman Sachs it's a non-tech company. They've laid off a bunch of people too. So we're not just seeing it in the tech industry. So, the question that everybody is probably thinking about is, how do we protect ourselves? How do we sort of create an insurance policy for our jobs so that we can feel ready in case we get laid off? Or maybe we get lucky and we don't get laid off, but now we're feeling fear kind of going forward into 2023. How do we protect ourselves against this turbulence, Alan?
Great question. I don't think anything has changed here in terms of how people need to protect themselves. I think that this is a wake-up call for people that, as a reminder, almost everybody, most employees in most jurisdictions are employed at will. And if you have not read your contract when you signed your offer letter at whether it be Amazon or American Express or Pepsi or wherever, in most jurisdictions, you're signing something that says you are employed at will. And what that says is that company can terminate you for any reason at any time. It also means that you as an individual can leave at any time for any reason. So people are getting surprised by these rash actions that these companies are taking. But
Mm-hmm.
in actuality, this was always potentially the case. So I think on the
Mm-hmm.
positive side, it's giving people the wake up call that, hey, I'm a free agent. I need to protect myself. I need to prepare for myself because
Mm-hmm.
despite whatever the companies say about they're focusing on the career development or we're a family or we care about our employees, that's all BS. And the truth is you need to own your career. And
Mm.
it sucks how it comes sometimes at a 3 a.m. email or that you're
Mm-hmm.
locked out of your system or you can't go into the office. But this has always been the case.
Mm. That's a nice reality check that the employed at will. And I love that you spun it in a positive way and also the negative way. The negative being feeling out of control that you could lose your job at any moment. But the reality is, and I think we heard this was the narrative last year, which was and I'm going to say it incorrectly now that we're live, but it was the sort of people leaving. Remind me, what was that narrative that we heard a lot about?
The Great Resignation.
That's exactly
Or
right.
was it
Yep.
the Great
The great
Resignation?
resignation. Yeah. So we saw a lot of people exercising their at will employment last year. And now the tables have turned and employers are exercising the at will. And so going forward, it's a nice reality check that maybe we got a little too comfortable. And going forward, to create more stability and confidence in our careers, we might want to think slightly differently. So, you've given us great context about being employed at will. Tell me more about if I was looking for work, if I've just got laid off, what should I be thinking about or doing to create a sense of more confidence and maybe bring back some more of that comfort that I maybe feel like I've lost because of all these changes? What should I be doing now?
First off, you got to think about your mindset. Some people I
Mm,
speak to take it personally that, oh, I did something wrong, that I'm getting laid
mm,
off here. And there's a percentage of people that deal with that. It's important to know, especially with these mass layoffs, it has nothing to do with you. I've
mm,
seen really highly qualified people get axed because they were part of a division or a group that
mm-hmm,
just was cut like a buzzsaw. I've
mm-hmm,
seen people that were really tenured at a company get axed and they were shocked that, like, hey, I spent 12 years here at Salesforce. How could they do this to me?
mm-hmm,
So it's kind of a little bit of a reality check, but
mm-hmm,
in your mind, first, you got to get over it that don't take it personally. This is
mm-hmm,
what you signed up for to work for a company. And I think generally it makes sense to work for a company. There's lots of pros of working for a company. There's actually a lot more stability working for a company than as an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur now. I have
yep,
no idea what my monthly cash flow is. I had a
yep,
lot more benefit when I was working at Salesforce or Google or wherever in knowing
mm-hmm,
what my monthly paycheck was going to be.
mm-hmm,
So you need to first say, it's not me.
mm-hmm,
Secondly, you need to take action because I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn saying, hey, I was laid off. Can you help me find a job in
mm-hmm,
HR or as a program
mm-hmm,
manager or sales?
mm-hmm,
That's okay. Maybe someone is going to look out and happen to have that role for you right there at their ready.
mm-hmm,
But more
mm-hmm,
likely, you need to take ownership of your career and you need to be
mm-hmm,
proactive about your search. So,
mm-hmm,
first, mindset. Secondly, take proactive control. And
mm-hmm,
a big part with that proactive control is building relationships, building
mm-hmm,
outreach, reaching out to people, seeking advice, and especially during this time of need. First off, even before these difficult times, a lot of people would be very willing to offer advice. I
mm-hmm,
got 24 out of my 29 jobs in my career because someone was nice enough to say, hey, you should speak to Alan.
mm-hmm,
Now I see so much outpouring of help and support, whether it be on LinkedIn or in other groups, of people
mm-hmm,
willing to help. So reach out, seek advice, do it humbly, do
mm-hmm,
it politely, do
mm-hmm,
it with respect, and you will be amazed if you ask somebody for advice,
mm-hmm,
how often someone will be willing to offer you advice.
mm-hmm. I want to say one more time something that you just mentioned so that it doesn't get skipped over. I think it's really important. And that is like I forget the numbers now, but 24 out of 29. Did I say that right? 24 out of
Yep.
29 of your
Yep.
jobs in your career you got
Yeah.
because of relationships that you had with other people. So that's, what is that, 80 to 90% of the jobs that you've gotten
Something
in
like
your
that. Yeah.
career is just through the network that you have. And when times get tough and we get laid off and we go on LinkedIn and we ask for help, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And LinkedIn is an amazing platform for that. But I think what you're advocating in the mindset shift is that, and you mentioned this to me before we jumped on this call today, always be looking. ABL, you said, always be looking.
Yes.
And part of that, from what you've shared with me, is to always be nurturing relationships with people in your professional network so that when you get laid off or if you want to transition, you're ready. Can you say a little bit more about how does that work and what are some best practices to always be nurturing your network so that you don't feel desperate or you don't feel, well, now I need something and I have to reach out? How do we create those like win-win, really beautiful relationships with our networks?
Sure. And let me just correct or elaborate on a couple of things. So 24 out of
Yeah.
this 29 were because of network, but they
Mm-hmm.
were not all because of network that I had originally. Some of them I
Mm.
had, and I think
Mm-hmm.
3 of them were because of nepotism. So I did
Mm.
nothing to benefit from the fact that my dad got me my first job on Wall Street or my Aunt Sammy got me a job at Restaurant Depot. So
Okay.
that
Yep.
that was something that I had privilege on, but
Mm-hmm.
about half of those 24 were relationships that I built
Mm-hmm.
and that I nurtured. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something that you can build as well. And there's this great quote of dig the well before you're thirsty. So you need to
Mm.
be building these relationships before the job is open. So you can spray and pray and you can just reach out to anybody. There's 875 million people on LinkedIn. You can start trying
Mm-hmm.
to connect with everybody and you will get a really poor response rate. Or you can be more strategic with your approach. And
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds maybe a little shady that I have to be strategic with networking and building relationships,
Mm-hmm.
but if you read anything by Dr. Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence, which is one of the most influential books I've ever read, it's about
Mm.
how you influence and persuade people. There are ways that you can reach out to people and build relationships. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have some sort of commonality with them, if you have some sort of direction of why you're reaching out to people, what I
Mm-hmm.
generally advise people is start with your goals. Start understanding where you want to go. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you understand where you want to go, then you start seeing, okay, who works at those places? Who could
Mm-hmm.
potentially give me some more insight about those organizations and those places?
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of commonality do I have? Did someone that went to Binghamton, my undergrad university, perhaps work at Tesla now? Maybe a company I
Mm-hmm.
want to work for. I can look on LinkedIn and say, hey, who went to school at Binghamton? Who's at Tesla now? And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, I have that commonality with Binghamton,
Mm-hmm.
and I reach out. And I'm not reaching out to say, hey, I want a job at Tesla. You're reaching out to make a connection based on your existing commonality, in that case,
Mm-hmm.
Binghamton. And you're
Mm-hmm.
reaching out like that. You're developing that rapport. When you and I connected, I believe the first message I sent to you, you did some good marketing effort on some direct messaging campaign. And I was really impressed with how thoughtful you were with really understanding the mindset and developing courses. So I think I reached out to you on LinkedIn blindly and said, Elena, I probably called you Dr. Schlachter to be more formal, but I said, hey, I'm really impressed with what you did here. You were working with another marketing person, Justin Welsh, that I
Mm-hmm.
had worked with before. So I used that commonality too. And I said, I
Mm-hmm.
really like what you do here. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I didn't say, I want to talk to you and see how you can help me grow Kadima. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what I did first. I just
Mm-hmm.
complimented you. I talked about the commonality, and then we
Mm-hmm.
started to have that rapport. If you
Mm-hmm.
never replied to me, that would have been fine. I would have gone on to someone else. And
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't reply to me, it probably would have meant that you would not have been a giving, generous person anyway. That would
Mm-hmm.
have provided me advice and help anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
it would have helped me. It would have reduced my time of
Mm-hmm.
knowing that Elena is really not that helpful of a person. On the contrary, I think you responded really quickly, and then we started to have a rapport, and then we got on a phone call, and I realized that,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, you're really an awesome person, and really, like, I already knew you knew what you were talking about. But then through the conversation on LinkedIn, I also realized that you're someone who is comfortable giving advice, likes to help out other people, and you've given me a lot of insight and support and helped me grow. So that's how you do it.
Yeah. So I mentioned about win-win relationships. And I think one thing, there's also a strategy behind finding the right relationships to invest in. And I think it's okay if you are trying to build relationships with people, especially on LinkedIn. Don't feel rejected if you reach out to someone and they don't respond. It probably is because they're just not the right person for you. And as you mentioned, the more commonality and the more authenticity in how you compliment and connect with people, the more likely people will be to respond and reciprocate. Even if they say, no, I don't have the bandwidth, they are maybe likely to suggest somebody else to reach out to. Thank you for the compliments. And I also appreciate the example that is, you might reach out to a few people to ask for advice. And if you don't hear back from some of them, don't feel rejected. Just believe in perhaps that they're the right people, the ones that respond, and that those are the relationships to nurture and to stay in touch with for any time you might need something in the future.
That actually helps you out because they're giving you an early indicator that they may
Mm-hmm.
not be that helpful. But I would
That's right.
first follow up maybe a second time, because sometimes a message gets lost in LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
or lost in email
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But once you
Yeah.
go 2 times and you don't get a response, move
Mm-hmm.
on to the next.
I was told by a coach, I don't know, early in my career, that one of the most important things to do that most people don't do is the follow up. So we might do one outreach, but then we don't follow up. And actually, the opportunities come from the follow up. So I love that you mentioned that it's an important piece for us to take home is don't forget the follow up. I remember my first job out of college. I was coached by this woman who was an amazing professional mentor. And she said, when you do your follow up, because I was doing marketing at the time, she said, when you do your follow up, it's okay to say things like, I hope I'm not being too annoying, but I really am interested in. So throwing in some vulnerability, some authenticity,
Yes.
some just organic, like, maybe you think this is annoying, or I hope I'm not coming off in a certain way, and I would really love to talk to you. Half of the time, people would respond to me and say, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you sooner. I was really busy, or we had this in the family, or whatever. So doing the follow up and being as authentic as possible often will open more doors than you can imagine. And as soon as I learned that, from that very first job, I had so much more confidence in my following up with people in any endeavor, and it really works. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So, one more question for you as we sort of lead into our wrap up here. And that is, so we talked about building relationships. And if I understand from working with you, a lack of relationships can be a big problem in making a job transition, getting a new job, getting referrals. Not having a really solid professional network is one core challenge for people and is something we can work on. What are some of the other big challenges that you understand from working with clients in the job acquisition process? Where do people often get most stuck?
Yeah, great question. There's three main hurdles that I see generally with people. One is getting in front of a human being for consideration. So if you look at the job acquisition funnel, when you submit a resume, you are amongst hundreds for popular companies like a Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Goldman Sachs. You're in with thousands of potential applicants. So you need to get in front of a human being
Mm-hmm.
so that you can actually speak to a recruiter to start
Mm-hmm.
the interview process. I've spoken to someone who had submitted about 22,000 resumes and got no interviews. I was like, dude, like, when are you going to learn? You're doing something incorrect here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an extreme. But
Mm-hmm.
the first part is like getting to a recruiter so you can get on a call with a recruiter
Mm-hmm.
and you can start the interview process. That's one
Mm-hmm.
part.
Mm-hmm.
The second part that I see as a big hurdle is some people are getting interviews, but they
Mm-hmm.
are not getting past the 3 stages of the interviews. And there are 3 stages of 95% of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
It's the recruiter screen. Then, if the recruiter likes you, it's the hiring manager screen. And then,
Mm-hmm.
if the hiring manager likes you, then you go to the full interview loops. And I
Mm-hmm.
see people that get stuck. They're doing lots of interviews, and they're fumbling the ball, usually at the recruiter or the hiring manager screen. It's
Mm-hmm.
often not at the final loops, but sometimes I see that. So then the second part is converting interviews to offers.
Mm-hmm.
And the third primary challenge that I see is confusion and intimidation by the compensation and the titles. So
Mm-hmm.
people are opting out of even applying because they are intimidated by salary, bonus, sign on bonuses, RSUs, all the complexity, and they're trying to figure out what am I worth and what level I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they're either not applying,
Mm-hmm.
or they're afraid of what to say, what they're looking for in terms of compensation, and
Mm-hmm.
they're opting out. And then when they get to the offer stage, they're not earning what they're worth because
Mm-hmm.
maybe they said something inappropriate during the beginning conversation with a recruiter, and they're
Mm-hmm.
chopping their knee out from under them. So those are
Mm-hmm.
the three areas. It's like getting the interview,
Mm-hmm.
converting the interview to offers,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you get that offer, getting paid what you're worth. Those are the three
Mm-hmm.
primary areas that probably cover about 90%. And with that, a lot of it's mindset and confidence, but that impacts all three of them. But it's those three
Sure.
stages that I see those big hurdles that when I work with clients, that's where we usually focus. It's usually one of those three areas.
Awesome. And I and I think back on the times I've been looking for work, I really resonate with those areas, and of course very much resonate with what am I worth? And how do I figure that out? And oftentimes what we think we're worth is probably significantly less than what we could be making. And so to your point about mindset, um, such an important detail. So as you and I are working together, Alan, we came together to create programs, courses, offerings that will really have an impact on people regardless of where they're at in the job opportunities, job acquisition process. And what you and I have been very thoughtful about is accessibility. And historically, the work that you've done, which is incredible, might not be as accessible in terms of time commitment or money invested. And because of everything that's going on in the work world and the economy, you and I decided that we wanted to do something a little different, which was to make bite-sized opportunities. We call them micro coaching courses. We wanted to put something small together that can help people with one of those core challenges, whether it's the interviews or the offers or the negotiating what you're worth. So, Alan, tell everybody more about what we've come up with. And we're excited to be talking about this for the very first time.
Yeah, Elena. So we came up with figuring out how to solve those three main problems that people have. So we
Mm-hmm.
came up with a micro course that is focused on getting people in front of the human being to get more interviews, which is highly
Mm-hmm.
focused on networking, highly
Mm-hmm.
focused on earning referrals, not asking for referrals, and
Mm-hmm.
getting in front of that human being so you can
Mm-hmm.
get those interviews. We also created a course that once you get to the human, how you think about each stage of the interview. There
Mm-hmm.
are specific questions that recruiters are asking you. Like, again, when you get to the interview stage, it's a
Mm-hmm.
recruiter, then
Mm-hmm.
the hiring manager, then the interview loops or the panel. And there are different series of questions and different things that those three constituents are probing you at. And we've broken that down to make sure that you are good at getting past the recruiter at 80% clip, past the
Mm-hmm.
hiring manager at 80% clip. And then once
Mm-hmm.
you get into the final round, there it's a little bit more arbitrary. But if you get into enough of those finals, you
Mm-hmm.
will come home with the championship trophy.
Mm.
And then we came up with one of negotiating for more and getting paid what you're worth. And
Mm-hmm.
some people incorrectly think that negotiation only starts after you get the offer.
Mm-hmm.
Quite contrary. It
Mm-hmm.
starts in that first conversation that you have with that recruiter. When that
Mm-hmm.
recruiter asks you, how much money are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
If you respond to them, you most likely are underselling yourself, because if you are a woman, if you're a person of color, if you are someone that is not connected to the industry, you
Mm-hmm.
are likely not getting paid. You're likely getting paid. I believe women get paid about like 81 cents on the dollar. And I think black Black women get paid like 39 cents on the dollar versus white
Mm.
men or something like that.
Mm.
And so you're anchoring on a number, what you've been paid before. And if
Mm-hmm.
you reveal anything to that recruiter, you're screwing yourself over. So
Mm.
there are ways that you can confidently deflect that until the end.
Mm-hmm.
So we've broken down each of those areas very specifically so that into like these micro coaching courses
Mm-hmm.
that help to focus on those three main challenges.
Yeah. And in my expertise and experience working with a variety of people and building their learning experiences, the number two things that are the most important to get results. So definitely understanding the problem, which you clearly do. You've worked with enough people now in one-on-one coaching. You pay very close attention to what's happening in the world, in the job market, in the economy. I'm pretty confident we've nailed down the core challenges. And so our micro coaching courses address those very targeted challenges so that you don't have to invest a bunch of time going through a large process to just get better at the interviews. You get to do that in a 3-month process. And so we've targeted the problem very well. We hope, fingers crossed, Alan, that we've got the problem down for people. The other thing that I'm really excited about is that people get access to you, of course, in
Yes.
bi-monthly coaching, but they get access to other people who are in the same experience and challenge. Oftentimes, we feel so alone in searching for a job, we feel so alone in the challenges that we're experiencing, and there's so much value in knowing that we're not alone, and hearing other people, how are they thinking about getting through the first 2 interviews, and how are they thinking about negotiations and figuring out what they're worth. I'm really excited that what we're offering is not only a targeted, at the time of need, you need help with an interview because you just got a couple of interviews. Awesome. We've got something for you. You're about to do some negotiations or you're preparing for that. We've got something for you. And oh, by the way, you get Alan. And oh, by the way, you get peers who are doing the exact same thing with you, because we undervalue the peer-to-peer mentoring, thinking, sharing. And so that's going to be a big piece of these micro coaching courses, is coaching from you and some peer coaching and peer access. And of course, as you've mentioned already, what are those very prescriptive steps that you should take to address one of those 3 challenges and get the results that you're looking for? Now, I also like to say, you've got to do the work. And Alan's going to be very clear
Yes.
with what the work is, but you're not going to be alone. And you're going to have really clear, specific guidance for a very accessible time and money invested. And I just can't wait to see the results that we're going to create for people, Alan.
Yeah. And I totally agree that people need to do the work. So I know you have a background in psychology. I was a PhD psychologist dropout, but I remember during my studies that the single biggest factor for clients being successful in therapy was not the method of psychological treatment, whether it's Freudian or cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's whether the patient was motivated to change. So if you are motivated to do the work and you follow the steps that we lay out very formulaically with support and guidance, this stuff works. But if you expect that this is a pill that you take, then you can go to psychiatrist and you can just take some drugs from the psychiatrist. But this is something that we show you the blueprint on how to do. I'm there to help coach you. And there is going to be this community as well of support that will help guide and support you. But it does work. But you do need to follow the plan. It's like going to the gym. You can't just take it. Well, it's not like shooting yourself up with steroids. You have to like actually go to the gym and pump the iron. And it's easier than going to the gym, I think. This is you're going to be meeting lots of good people. You're going to be following a very proven method, but you got to do the work. And if you're not ready to do the work, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Something else from the learning perspective is that the people who get the best results when they invest in any kind of learning opportunity, a course, working with a coach, one-on-one, and memberships, communities, all the things in between, the number one predictor of people getting results is being ready. And the readiness means that you feel confident you can do the work. You've got the baseline understanding of what I'm going to do, what I'm about to do, and you feel energized and committed to doing it. So if you are
Yeah.
listening to this conversation because you've been laid off, because you've been thinking about a transition, you're probably ready to do the work, but there is no magic pill. If I want to lose 10 pounds, I've got to hit the gym. I've got to go run on the track. I've got to eat better. And the great thing is, when it comes to making a transition, whether you are forced into it through a layoff or you've been thinking about it for a long time and you want to make the move, it's nice to know that somebody is giving you a path to follow, that you don't have to create it and come up with it on your own. I think that's another huge value, is that we feel overwhelmed and lost because we don't know what to do. So these micro courses take the guesswork out of it, and all you have to do is just be on the path and follow it and get the results you're looking for.
And a great thing with these micro courses is I've gotten some feedback from people, because I created Kadima initially to have this holistic program that will
Mm-hmm.
take you through a 6-month program. And
Mm-hmm.
some people were not ready for that. And some
Mm-hmm.
people thought that was too long of a commitment. So what,
Mm-hmm.
like, you actually gave me this idea, Elena, based on your work of, hey, people need to like get started, get their foot in the door, and
Mm-hmm.
start taking action. So we
Mm-hmm.
broke this down so that you can start taking that action.
Yeah.
You can always work with us further with different opportunities, but the critical aspect is take action. And the
Mm-hmm.
other critical aspect
Mm-hmm.
is resilience,
Right.
because the job search, like going to the gym, is
Mm-hmm.
tough.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to get rejected. Last time I applied for jobs, I applied to 300 jobs. I got 47 interviews. I made it to the final round 20 times. I got 5 offers, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
good, but that means I
Mm-hmm.
got 295 rejections.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept going out there. I kept
Yeah.
applying, and I kept
Mm-hmm.
learning through the process.
Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning of this conversation not to take things personally. So whether you've been laid off,
No,
whether you've
shake it
been
off.
rejected 295 times in all the applications, don't take it personal. Yeah, shake it off.
Don't take it personally, but learn
Mm,
from it.
that's right.
Learn from it and
That's right.
grow and improve. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, another exciting piece is that in these micro coaching courses, because you're with some people who are working together, they're all going to be experiencing rejection, because we do. That's just part of the game. We get
Yeah.
to learn from each other. So you have a safe place to go to learn together. Well, why didn't that work? What did I do wrong? What could I do differently? And get some guidance from Alan, who's clearly knows more than all of us, significantly more, about how to overcome these barriers. Um, Yay, awesome for us. Awesome that we're putting this out there. And I love the accessibility piece, Alan. I'm really proud to be able to be a part of a team that's really focused on that accessibility. So we've got a couple minutes, Alan. I'd love to have you wrap us up with one story of results that you got from a client that you are really proud of, really excited about, just to kind of leave us all on a really happy note.
Yeah, sure. So one of my clients, Clemente, I'm not going to say his last name, he actually worked with me for some of the longest period of time. He was working in a really shitty organization. I'm not going to say the organization. It's a beverage company. It's a big global beverage company where he was being yelled at and berated.
Oof.
He worked with me for 11 months, which is longer than most. Usually it takes about 3.76 months.
Mm-hmm.
He got an offer along the way from Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
Great offer. I'm not a big fan of Oracle, but it was going to be a great offer. It was going to be transitioning from beverages to Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
Before they signed the paper, they realized that they messed up his visa situation, and then they had to retract the offer. Fortunately for him, he did not quit the beverage company before.
Mm-hmm.
And I continued, like, he was devastated, and he's like, you know what, I'm just staying at this crappy beverage company. But we continued to persist. And a few months later, like, he continued applying. He was getting to final rounds at Google and Meta, and he got an awesome job at Amazon. And he's at Amazon. He's been there for over a year. He's making more money. He's really excited. He has not been part of those 18,000 layoffs. And he's doing really well. But he persevered. He did, like, after he got rejected from, like, he got accepted by Oracle, then he got rejected by Oracle because of the visa situation. He paused working with me for a month. He's like, I'm tired of this. I'm giving up. But then he came back. He did this stuff. He got the awesome job at Amazon, and he was making, I believe, $92,000 more, working for one of the best companies in the world. And if I told you the beverage company it's a big global brand, but he's a hell of a lot happier working at Amazon, and that's through perseverance, following the plan, and the support from me and the community.
I love that. So, Alan, where do people go to learn more about what we're up to?
Yeah. So you go to our website, kadimacareers.com, and we are going to be launching these micro courses. We will have a specific site, specific links on the site. I don't even have that URL yet. We were so excited to record this that we don't have the URL. But I can tell you that when you go to kadimacareers.com, you will find that. Or if for some reason you cannot find that, you can email us at info@kadimacareers.com. And my team, it's usually me, will respond to you very quickly and get back to you. But if you are ready to accelerate your career, if you are frustrated with where you are, if you need some support, some confidence and care in getting the job that you deserve, getting more money, get a better opportunity, and really achieve and get your career on an accelerated path, we can help. We've done it before. And like all of our products and services that we've ever rolled out, they all come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. We very rarely, only in one instance, have had to actually give someone's money back. We will do that, but we are so confident that our stuff works that I'm really excited about this. And Elena, when you came to me with this idea of, hey, you're giving people too much at once and you're kind of intimidating them from getting started, and you kind of came up with this idea of the micro courses, I was like, that's ingenious. And I am very confident that people will be able to get started and start accelerating their careers right away.
Get some of those results in 2023. Very exciting.
Yep. Well, thank you, Elena, for taking on the hosting duty and allowing me to do a little bit more talking and a little less questions, although I do like to talk. We'll wrap up this episode of the Sick Career Podcast. I'm really excited to be announcing these micro courses. This is based on customer feedback. This is based on Dr. Schlachta and all of her knowledge as a PhD. What's your PhD in again?
Education and social health.
Education and social health. So you really have immense knowledge of how to turn concepts and learning into action and results. So I'm really excited about this. We're so confident about this. And don't forget, you own your career, and we at Kadima help accelerate it.